Hello, my name is Donald McKinnon, and the paper I chose was KEH-Gait, Towards a Mobile Healthcare User Authentication System by Kinetic Energy Harvesting, written by Wotao Zhu, Gauhao Lan, Keelan, Sarah Khalifa, Neil Bergman, Mahbub Hassan, and Winhu. During this presentation, I'm going to give some background on the problem space, discuss a potential attack vector common to wearable devices, talk about the solution the paper proposes, the KEH-Gait, go into a deep dive of how it works, discuss its advantages and disadvantages, present its performance metrics, and explain multi-step sparse representation classification, the author's solution to the accuracy problems KEH-Gait encounters. This paper focuses on mobile healthcare systems. These can be wearable devices like Fitbits or Garmin Connects and Apple Watches or a smartphone, or they can be something like a pacemaker. According to the paper, it's estimated that by 2025, the wearable device market will be worth more than $70 billion, so there's a huge opportunity for innovation here. This paper is specifically concerned with the part of the device that measures a person's gait. Traditionally, a device called an accelerometer is used. Continuous sampling of the accelerometer establishes a cycle that is used to determine a person's gait. And by gait, I mean how a person walks or runs. In some cases, accelerometers can even be used to measure the cycling or swimming strides as well, but this paper only focuses on walking and running. The continuous sampling is extremely battery intensive, so the authors set out to test if an alternative gait recognition mechanism in mobile healthcare systems is more efficient. They discover one and show how it can also be used for user authentication. High power consumption of accelerometer sampling may require a few milliwatts of energy. A device, like a pacemaker, quite simply cannot be required to meet these energy requirements because its battery isn't big enough. Its battery would have to be replaced more frequently, and that would require surgery. These battery requirements are really only suitable for smartphones, and even then, it's annoying to have to charge your smartphone more frequently because the accelerometer runs it up juice. Ideally, kinetic energy generated from the natural motion of the human body, up to just hundreds of microwatts, could be used to power wearable devices, but this isn't strong enough to meet the consumption requirements of accelerometer sampling. This is the motivation for the kinetic energy harvester discussed in this paper. However, before we get to this paper's solution to the battery consumption of accelerometers in wearable devices and their authorization, let's talk, authentication. Take a short detour to discuss the potential attack vectors and security benefits of wearable devices. Wearables are susceptible to impersonation attacks. An attacker could use someone else's wearable device within their control or steal its data to impersonate that person's health in order to file false insurance claims or obtain prescription drugs. In order to prevent these attacks, many wearable devices rely on secret pins to be unlocked, but these are difficult to use in part because wearable devices have such small screens. This wasn't mentioned in the paper, but as someone who has a job in the healthcare and life sciences industries and interacts with wearable devices, I know that increasingly tying their security to smartphones has helped mitigate some of these security risks. Gait recognition has potentially unique applications in biometrics. One's gait can always be generated. Namely, an able-bodied person can presumably always generate their typical walk. This differs from something like a key that a person would always have to have on them. Gait is also much less intrusive than something like saliva or blood, and generating one's gait requires no conscious knowledge. Our bodies should be able to generate them naturally. There's ongoing debate as to how secure and unique a person's gait is. However, the paper didn't really explore this. It's worth noting here that using gait to authenticate someone either to access their wearable device, or anything else also assumes that the person is able-bodied or at least capable of repeating a consistent gait, which may not be an inclusive assumption in all cases. Now let's get back to the problems wearables have due to continuously sensing their accelerometer draining battery life. The paper proposes the solution of the KEH-Gait. KEH-Gait is a way to recognize gait using kinetic energy harvester output voltage. It's less battery intensive, but it can also be less accurate, and we're going to get into why that is. It requires less battery life because it never has to sample the accelerometer. However, as we'll see, this comes at the cost of This comes at a cost in terms of the accuracy of its gait recognition, as well, at least when a single step is used. And I'll get into more detail about what I mean by a single step or multiple steps. Gait is recognized by observing the output voltages of kinetic energy harvesting. This works as a way to measure gait if it were to rely on humans having a unique gait. If we rely on humans having a unique gait, then it follows that the corresponding patterns of harvesting power from kinetic energy should also be unique. Okay, now let's dive into what multi-step sparse representation classification, or MSSRC, is and the problem it solves. I pulled the key excerpts explaining the motivation and achievements of MSSRC from the paper here in an extremely technical and mathematical word salad. Let me try to translate this into plain English. The primary issue with KEH-Gait is that one step, a person literally moving one foot in front of the other, doesn't expend enough kinetic energy for either of the two types of sensors they tested with to accurately determine a person's gait. In fact, they could only determine someone's gait based on one step with 86% accuracy using the PEH tool and 75% using the EEH tool. So they needed to get more accuracy in determining someone's gait. To do this, they effectively combined adjacent steps, the conceptually average steps, so that they could infer the gait of a single step. Now, they acknowledge that this relies on a pretty big assumption. It's the fourth bullet point I have listed above, taken from the paper. In layman's terms, that basically means that they assume a person's consecutive steps hold to a very consistent cycle. That's it. The assumption, it turns out, tends to generally hold as compared to sampling an accelerometer. It allows them to achieve accelerometer-like accuracy, which is necessary for user authentication at a fraction of the energy. So the image I have here, taken directly from the paper, shows the normal process flow of KEH-Gait. It consists of three parts: offline dictionary training, pre-processing of input signals, and classification. I'll now walk through the flow to show how an identity is determined from a gait. During the offline dictionary training phase, gait cycles are first segmented from time series voltage signals and then interpolated into the same length. After outlying cycles are removed, the resulting gait cycles are used to form the training dictionary. This training dictionary gets a projection optimization algorithm applied to it to get a projection matrix. Using this matrix, they can then, the people writing the paper, the authors, then calculated the prime value of the training dictionary, the reduced training dictionary, which is used as a classifier for gait recognition. After the acquisition of the test signal, they again apply gait segmentation and interpolation to obtain the gait cycles from the test signal. The same optimized projection matrix is used again to reduce the dimension of the test signal and provide a measurement vector. They then pass the training dictionary, the prime value of the measurements, to the classifier. This classifier then finds its sparse coefficient vector, which is fused with the vectors of different gait cycles based on the novel sparse fusion model MSSRC that I talked about in the last slide, and the fused sparse vector is used to calculate the residuals. Lastly, the identity is obtained by finding the minimum residual, which should be consistent. All right, let's discuss some of the advantages and disadvantages of this KEH-Gait. First, as we mentioned, KEH-Gait comes with some impressive power savings since the accelerometer is not being sampled. Further, the output voltage can be used to power the wearable's battery, which would power or at least extend its life. Additionally, the unique output voltage can be used for authentication without adding more sensors. This is important because weight and size are crucial to making a wearable device. The main disadvantage, as opposed to accelerometer sampling, is that it's difficult to achieve the same level of accuracy using a one-axis voltage rather than three-axis accelerometer signals. This paper addresses this by proposing what I just talked about, the sparse fusion method, which is the way to pull in any missing information, basically, for a single step by using multiple steps, the steps surrounding it. The authors of the paper built two KEH-Gait prototypes that I've already mentioned. The first is based on a piezoelectric energy harvester, which I called PEH, and then the other is based on the electromagnetic energy harvester, EEH. They then tested the gait recognition accuracy of KEH-Gait using both of these across 20 different people. The results show that, with conventional classification techniques over a single step, KEH-Gait saw about 6% lower accuracy compared to accelerometer-based gait recognition. However, by using multi-step sparse representation classification, KEH-Gait performed at least as well as accelerometer-based gait recognition in its authentication capabilities. And lastly, they saw that currently available microprocessors could read KEH voltage within 33 microseconds, 2 orders of magnitude faster than the time it takes to wake up, interrogate, and then read acceleration values from typical 3-axis accelerometers, which means that KEH-Gait would be much more energy efficient than accelerometer-based gait detection. In fact, across their 20 subjects, they showed an improved energy efficiency of an impressive 78.15%. All right, and that's it. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Please reach out to me on Piazza if you have any questions. Goodbye.